never seen it released as a movie. With that emergence, I then got asked if I wanted to, between that date and where we are today, to cut a long story short, Warner Brothers obviously were keeping their eye on this and gradually wanted to go through some evolutions, which brings us to where we are now, which is showing the version really as it was intended to be and intended to be released then. Sorry about the answer, it's a long answer.
Yeah, hello, Nils from Norway here. It's great to see you all here, and especially I would say Ridley Scott. It's great that you are coming. Blade Runner is one of my absolutely favorite science fiction movies, and I wonder how come you only made 2 science fiction movies when you actually made 2 of the most brilliant ones, Alien and Blade Runner. Also, you mentioned that your career in Hollywood started quite late, 25 years ago, and while now you have something like 4 or 5 upcoming big-budget productions in Hollywood, have you somehow cracked the Hollywood code? Are you learning to cope with Hollywood now? I mean, your career seems to be going as good as it possibly could get. So, also, third question would be, you have a movie called Body of Lies upcoming. It's dealing with the Iraq War, which now seems to be a trend or wave in Hollywood. There are already 2 movies here in Venice about the Iraqi war, so I'd like you to comment on that as well. Thank you.
Okay. How does he get 3 questions? Right. The Iraqi war, we did, I think, the first of the first by doing Black Hawk Down, about Mogadishu, which is not the Iraq war, but is a similar penetration of us into parts of the world where we can argue, have we any business being there? Is it our business? It's not our war. Or is it our war? And where human lives are being lost, then it becomes our war. And so therefore I think Black Hawk Down carried the same message. I don't want this to get into a political discussion, but I want to make that point, that I think Black Hawk started off a trend where Hollywood studios were less afraid to start taking on board more serious subject matter, which is, so that's a plus. I think many more so-called populist movies should be addressing world problems, not, silly stories. I'm working backwards now. The second question was how I'm seated in Hollywood. And you never crack Hollywood, you never crack the system. So that's the first thing to learn. Don't try and crack the system. Go, to a certain extent, along with it. I consider myself very fortunate to still be working at that level in Hollywood after all these years, and it's taken 25 years to do that. Including, that's myself and my brother, okay? First question was, I've forgotten, what was the first question? Just in a word, what was it? Oh, Alien was, pretty special, and so is Blade Runner. This is why we're still here talking about it. And I think that answers the question itself. The fact I did 2 does not mean I would love to do another science fiction movie, and I'm continually looking for that. So if anyone's got a science fiction script in their briefcase, give it to him, and he can give it to me, and then we can reply officially. Otherwise, you'll accuse me of stealing it, right? So I'm always looking for science fiction because the genre, which is a much overused word, is so marvelous because it is, in the best sense of the word, an arena or a universe where anything can happen. Problem about a lot of science fiction is let's call them the writers or the conceiver of most material, which I think is a sign of a great writer. Very early on, you should draw up your rule book, your parameters of what the truth is within the context of a fantasy or a science fiction or a science possibility. Because if you don't do that, the bucket leaks and the story doesn't really work and it all becomes rather bloody silly. And I think the good thing about Alien is, Alien was a kind of C movie that elevated itself to a B movie because we drew the parameters very firmly at onset, and I stuck within that context and that story. Blade Runner was the same thing. We drew the universe. Within that universe, the possibility of human genetic replication is feasible and can happen. And once you get that down, then you can also then start talking in terms of how are they used. Well, they're used off-world. How is it off-world? Because by now, in this particular world, you start to believe there might be moon base, there might be Mars base, and off that, from Mars base is a springboard into the universe. So already you just sit there and accept it. And I think that's why those two films kind of work really well. It touches the truth within the context of their own storytelling.
Buongiorno, sono Marco Spagnoli.